Picture the scene, the roar of 100,000 fans shaking the arena to its very foundation, the blinding flash of camera bulbs, the raw electric energy that crackles in the air just before the cage door locks. This is the image the UFC sells to the world, a modern-day coliseum where warriors are forged and legends are born. It's more than a sport, it's a global machine, a finely tuned engine that prints money, mints superstars, and dominates the world of combat. At the center of this hurricane of success stands one man, the face of the brand, Dana White. Brash, unapologetic, the master of the media, he sells us a story of grit, passion, and the American dream. A story we all wanted to believe. But behind every empire, there are shadows. Behind every perfect story, there are secrets. And in 2012, when the UFC seemed untouchable, a legal document was quietly filed. A lawsuit that contained allegations so toxic, so explosive, it threatened to tear down the entire glittering facade and expose the rotten core hidden beneath. And this story isn't about what you think. It's not about a failed drug test or a fighter's contract dispute. This goes all the way to the top, not to a champion in the cage, but to the king in the boardroom, the man who owned the entire show. It's the story of a high-level female executive who alleges she was offered an unspoken contract, a choice between her career and her body, a choice to either sleep with the owner to get ahead or to be erased. This is the scandal the UFC buried under a mountain of cash. The story of absolute power, sexual coercion, and the alleged culture of silence, orchestrated and enforced by the one man who saw it all, Dana White himself. To understand the power at play, you must first understand the man in the shadows, Lorenzo Fertitta. Before the UFC was a global phenomenon, it was a pariah, a spectacle condemned by politicians as human cockfighting. While Dana White was the loud public face, Lorenzo was the true power. He and his brother Frank didn't just see a fight promotion. They saw an empire in the making. They were casino royalty, born and raised in the cutthroat world of Las Vegas, a city that teaches you one golden rule: the house always wins. They took that brutal raw product and polished it, sanitized it, and sold it to the masses. They used their immense wealth and political connections to get the sport sanctioned, state by state. Fertitta wasn't just a businessman. He was a kingmaker in a kingdom built on risk, indulgence, and secrets buried deep in the desert sand. He operated with a quiet authority that was far more intimidating than Dana's public outbursts. In his world, power wasn't yelled, it was whispered, and everyone listened. Into this world of sharks and high rollers stepped Rochelle Montoya, and it's crucial to understand who she was and who she wasn't. She wasn't a ring girl hired for her looks. She wasn't a starstruck fan who got a job in the office. She was a highly educated, fluent, and fiercely intelligent corporate executive. Her title was Vice President of Latino Marketing. In the early 2000s, this wasn't just another department, it was the key to unlocking a billion-dollar market. The UFC had conquered the English-speaking world, but Latin America was the next frontier. Montoya was the architect of that expansion. She was tasked with selling this uniquely American brand to a massive, passionate, and untapped audience. Her success was the company's success. She was a rising star in a man's world. She was ambitious. She was successful. She was valuable. And according to the horrifying claims in her lawsuit, in the dark, transactional world of Lorenzo Fertitta, that combination of assets didn't just make her a respected colleague. It made her a target. Then in 2012, the silence was shattered by the cold, sterile language of a court document. A lawsuit was filed, and the allegations within were a bombshell aimed directly at the heart of the empire. It wasn't a whisper in a hallway anymore. This was a formal declaration of war, and the target was named explicitly Lorenzo Fertitta, co-owner and king of the UFC. According to Montoya's sworn statement, what began as a professional relationship started to curdle. The lawsuit describes a pattern of unwanted advances. Imagine your phone buzzing late at night, not with a work query, but with a message from the billionaire owner of your company. Montoya claimed these messages became increasingly personal and then deeply inappropriate. The lawsuit alleges he sent her sexually explicit texts detailing fantasies he had about her. The professional line wasn't just blurred, it was obliterated. But this wasn't just clumsy, predatory behavior. The lawsuit alleged it was far more calculated. This was a proposition, a test. Montoya claimed Fertitta began to subtly, then overtly, link her future at the UFC to her response to his advances. Conversations about promotions, bigger projects, and a more powerful role within the company were allegedly intertwined with suggestions of a more personal relationship. It was a cold corporate power play dressed up as desire. The unspoken question hanging in the air during every meeting was, how badly do you want this? The lawsuit doesn't mince words. It lays out the expectation with chilling clarity. I'm quoting directly from the legal filing. She was, quote, expected to meet with Fertitta in his hotel room and provide him with sexual favors in order to keep her job and to be promoted. Let that sink in. This wasn't a suggestion. It was presented, she claims, as a condition of her employment. The price of ambition, laid bare in a legal document. Rochelle Montoya refused. She drew a line in the sand. She chose her integrity over the promotion, her self-respect over the corner office. She made it unequivocally clear that she was not interested and would not play this grotesque game. And according to her lawsuit, the moment she said no, the gears of the massive UFC machine turned against her. Her career, she alleged, was no longer just stalled. It was marked for systematic destruction. According to Montoya, the retaliation was swift. Her projects were sabotaged. Her authority was undermined. She was excluded from important meetings. But the most damning part of her claim involved Dana White. Montoya alleged that she informed Dana White about Fertitta's behavior, hoping he, as the president of the company, would intervene. What did White do? According to the lawsuit, he did nothing. He allegedly ignored her pleas, reinforcing a culture where the powerful are protected and the victims are silenced. By refusing to act, he became complicit in the cover-up. Montoya was eventually fired, and she sued for sexual harassment, wrongful termination, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The UFC's response was predictable and brutal. Their lawyers immediately went on the attack, painting Montoya as a disgruntled former employee looking for a payday. They denied all allegations, but they clearly understood how devastating a public court battle would be. The image of the UFC's billionaire owner being cross-examined about sending explicit texts would be a public relations nightmare. And so, they made the problem go away. The case never went to trial. The UFC and Rochelle Montoya reached a confidential settlement. The exact amount was never disclosed, but experts speculate it was a multi-million-dollar payout. In exchange for the money, she agreed to a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, legally binding her to silence forever. The story vanished, buried under a mountain of cash and legal paperwork. Lorenzo Fertitta sold the UFC for $4 billion a few years later, walking away richer than ever. Dana White remained president, more powerful than ever, and Rochelle Montoya was never heard from again in the MMA world. This case offers a chilling glimpse behind the curtain of the UFC's empire. It suggests a corporate culture where loyalty is demanded and silence can be bought. It forces us to question what really goes on in those executive boardrooms, far away from the octagon lights. The settlement ensured that we will never know the full truth of what happened, but the allegations remain, a permanent stain on the history of the UFC. And it leaves a haunting question. If this could happen to a vice president, what other stories from other women remain buried in silence forever?